Welcome. Today, we are going to talk about something that us creative entrepreneurs don't always love to discuss, which is numbers. And by the end of today's conversation, I hope that you'll be convinced that numbers not only aren't boring or it's something that you can't do, but also that that numbers can be a fuel for your creativity. So I'm super excited about that. I am joined by the wonderful Leslie Major. Leslie is a certified public accountant, a business advisor, and a serial entrepreneur with more than 30 years of experience supporting small business owners. So, obviously, she is the exact right person to talk to us about this. And Leslie, welcome.
Thank you, Stacy. It's a pleasure to be here. I love talking about numbers. I know that's the opposite of what you're saying, but my goal is to help everyone find a way to make it exciting for them. It doesn't have to be boring. There's a lot of creativity that can be applied, even in this topic.
I love that. And I'm sure there's a lot of people thinking, like, or yeah, right. But by the end of today, I think we're all going to have our minds changed. So just to start out, as a creative person myself, this is that I'm not good with numbers is a phrase that I have said many, many, many times. And it's been an interesting week actually leading into this conversation. Because I've been going through my books and getting taxes ready, and it's actually been kind of a stressful experience this week. Normally, I feel like things are pretty dialed, but this year has been a little bit messier than I'm used to. And so I've actually been fluctuating a little I feel like I've grown so much in my mindset around numbers, and I really appreciate the value of numbers, and we use metrics in the business, but that's been a real journey. And this week has been testing that a little bit. So it's a really good time for this conversation for me, and I'm sure for many other creatives out there. But I want to start with that self-talk and sometimes actual talk that a lot of creatives say, which is, I'm not a numbers person. And I'm curious if you have a sense of where that story starts.
Unfortunately, I think a lot of that story starts from a very young age with labels, even a lot of times in the school, which I think is horrible because numbers, it's a huge thing, and it's all part of life that it doesn't, it's not like really complex math. It can be just very simple things. I mean, everyone knows how tall they are and how much they weigh, and those are numbers. They know how far it is to where they're going, and those things aren't intimidating. So I don't know why there has to be so much baggage around financial numbers in that same way. They can be simple and they can be helpful, just like a lot of other tools that we use in our creative pursuits as well. And embracing those and really looking at your mindset is, I love how you brought that up, because that is where the journey begins, is really analyzing your own mindset and your own judgments that you've put on yourself, and giving yourself a chance to reshape that.
It's interesting because I've been working on a book about creative productivity, and it's actually a really similar thing that happens with creative work in that usually in elementary school, people are kind of sorted. We're sorted into math and science or like creative art, the arts. And so as a young child, I was sorted into the creative bucket. My sister was sorted into the science and math bucket. And so I know for me that began very young, and it was just reinforced over time because of course when you're really good at one thing and meh at another thing, people are going to focus on the thing you're really good at. And that's where the praise, the accolades, the attention, the encouragement goes. And a lot of people, I mean, it's not like teachers and parents and society means to, but that's just a natural thing I think that we do. I'm so much more aware of that now. I'm grateful to have that awareness, but as a parent, but I think that's just something we get that story fed to us, and then that becomes our real stories. Like we start telling ourselves that story.
Yeah, that's right. And then it's just a cycle that's reinforced. And it's also in different, I think people get attracted to places where their strengths are valued. And so a lot of times it's even the environment that we're attracted to that kind of reinforces that talk. And oftentimes, and like a lot of creative circles, it's kind of a badge of honor to say I'm bad at numbers.
Oh
And
yeah. Hmm.
And, and it's like, that's not my thing. I, have someone else do all that. And it's really disempowering. And I hate to see people go down that road and buy into that lie. Because you're limiting yourself without realizing it.
Mm. When we were prepping for this conversation, you said something that I thought was really interesting, which is that creativity can actually improve financial decision making. And that had me scratching my head because those are not often things that we like this ability to be creative. We all have the ability to be creative, but let's say a well-honed skill of creativity. We don't always equate that with, oh, that's going to make me better at financial decision making. So can you explain that?
Yeah, creativity is a lot of pattern recognition. And it's also like connecting the dots from things that don't seem connected. And that's the same kind of thing that you can use in financial decision making, especially when you're empowering yourself. And I think that one thing that makes it more fun is when it's about you. Every person, their own financial information is going to be way more interesting than reading like a financial statement for some business that they have no interest in at all. And so just being creative in your approach to it and taking your creative genius and applying it to your own life and empowering yourself is a way that your creativity can be a tool even in financial decision making.
Hmm. I really like that. And I completely agree with that idea of it being disempowering. And it's interesting because it's been such a perfect week leading up to this conversation. But I had a conversation with somebody yesterday in the financial industry that felt very I don't know, like I felt like they were babying me in the conversation. Like I was incapable of understanding things. And I was on the other side of it thinking like I've been in business for 16 years. Like I know what a KPI is. Thank you, you know. And I think that sometimes when you I'm thankful that I've been on this journey of stepping more into the metrics and really appreciating them, but that's been a journey for me. It's been a multi-year journey. And I do remember back many years back when I would go into these conversations and I probably wouldn't have recognized that this person was talking down to me back then because I was talking down to me as well.
Mm-hmm.
I just would go, well, I don't understand, or I don't know how to read a P&L, or I don't know, I don't know how to set a I don't even know what a KPI is, all these things that I think that we just kind of go, well, it's not my thing, so I guess I don't need to understand it. Somebody else can explain it to me. And I think part of that's probably because like there's so many acronyms. Like I just used one.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many
Mm-hmm.
different things that report out to us or can report out to us, and that financial reporting piece I think is so critical. And I'd love to hear from you for a creative founder um, who wants to start really feeling empowered with their numbers. What type of financial reporting would you recommend? So, if they had to simplify into just 5 numbers that they are looking at, what would those be?
Well, I like how you brought up the fact that there's so many different terms and acronyms that can be intimidating. And I think it's important to start with the fact that you don't have to know all of those things. You only need to pull the ones that work for you.
Mm,
And a common, it's like revenue isn't a good example. That's something really important to know, but there's so many terms that people use. You can say income, you can say sales, you can say all of those things are basically the same thing. And so understanding how much money, like where your money is coming from in your business is super important, and knowing like like how much. But it's also important to work with your financial team to help you know what number, like how to measure that most effectively in your business. Because revenue for a day in one business is really valuable information. In another business, it has no meaning at all. It, like if you're selling like really high value, like selling cars, for instance, or $100,000 car, knowing that you sold, one car today and none tomorrow, that's not really that helpful, because you need a longer time horizon to really know what your revenue is. So just, call it what you want, what makes sense for you and your business, but knowing how much money, where your money is coming from and how much of it's coming is an important thing to know. So start with that. And then gross profit is another term that sounds a little intimidating, but all that means is for every time, like a car, we'll stay with that example. If you sell a car for $100,000, how much money do you actually get to keep? And that's your gross margin. It's if you paid 750,000 for it, then that's not a good deal. So just really understanding the difference between what you're selling something for and how much it's costing you, that is your gross profit. So how much do you get to keep every time you do something?
So
And
so far
then,
we have revenue in and where it's coming
yep,
from, and then we have the gross profit. Okay.
yep, yep. And I think it's important to think about too, for people that are selling their own time, that you need to think about how much it would cost you to have someone else do it, because you don't want to devalue your own time and like think of it as zero, because that's not actually helping you. Um, and so you always want to have some kind of cost associated with the time that you're spending, and using the market rate for what you would have to pay someone else to do the same thing is a really easy way to do that. And then monthly operating expenses, you'll hear people say burn rate. That's how much money it's costing you to be in business every day that, or every month that you're in business. And that's really important to know, because you have to, bring in enough revenue and gross margin to pay for that. So understanding those things is really important. And cash flow is, of course, really important. And that's the timing of when you get money and when you pay it out. And then net profit, that's, what you're doing it all for, and how that's, you have to have net profit to be sustainable. And I know that's not sexy, but, if you want to keep being creative, you need to be having the money coming in to sustain the work that you're doing. So
I love
that's,
that you brought it to that net profit, because I think especially with social media and even in entrepreneurial circles, you'll hear like, "Oh, they're making X million a year." And then when you have a conversation with somebody, they're making 10 million, but they're spending 9,500,000, of that money, and that business becomes a lot less impressive when you really look at the numbers. Sometimes they're spending more than this
mm-hmm.
like big number that they're earning. Um, you you alluded to my next question, which I love this phrase. You say that margin funds imagination, and again, that piqued my interest in my work in the creative field, and for anybody that is a creative in any way, shape, or form, which it can take a lot of ways, shapes, and forms.
Yeah.
What does that mean in practical terms?
That if you're giving, I mean, it's in some ways you can think about, like, if you have more margin in your day or in your schedule, it just gives you more flexibility, and it's the same thing with financial margin. The more money that you have to work with, the more flexibility you have. And that's just going to give you space to have more imagination and to try different things. And it's this exact same idea, it's having more margin just gives you more flexibility, more breathing room, more of all those things. And that fuels imagination.
Yeah, I can imagine that, it's also just the brain space, right? Of not
Mhm.
needing to
Yeah.
think about where you're gonna get your next client or how you're gonna pay that bill or whatever, or,
Mhm.
your books are messy, and so that's now that's tugging at you, and you don't know what your margin is actually, like, that is another one of those mental clutter pieces
Yep.
that just make it harder for you to be creative. So I love that. Margin funds imagination. So good. Okay, we talked about those five numbers. And let's see, let's just recap them real quick. Can you give me the quick recap? And then I'm going to ask you the next question.
Okay. Revenue, gross profit, operating expenses, cash flow, and net profit.
Okay. So with those five numbers in mind, which you've explained earlier, what is one financial concept? So if we were to even narrow this further, that once understood really changes things for creative entrepreneurs?
I think it's just thinking about it in your own, like building your own language around it so that it is more helpful to you is really important. Um, and under like cash flows, and I think too what you were saying is the judgment and stress around it, making sure that you're not doing that to yourself and just giving yourself permission to learn and grow and take it as a journey. Um, Nobody knows everything to start out. We're all learning new things and every day, which is part of the joy of life. And so just understanding what's coming in, what's going out, and what's left. I mean, the goal is to build wealth, not just have money coming through your, money coming in and out in itself is not helping you. You need to end up with something. And however whatever activity and effort you're putting in, that's your life and your time and your effort. And to have something that you're building is, that can be really motivating and fun, and you can do it in your own creative way. So yeah, just understanding that cash flow gives you margin, emotional stability, and that you can understand your own business, your own life, and you have the power to do that. And using your, resources, your financial team, whatever that looks like to help you accomplish that.
What should a financial team be made up of?
I think it's really important. I mean, like you were saying, getting ready for your taxes. This is kind of tax season in the U.S., and um, that's a really important thing that you have to do. You have to be compliant with that. But so you need someone that can handle that and take care of all the details, because you don't need to know all of that. That's what you hire them for. But you want them to be able to engage with you in a way that you enjoy, and that they don't talk down to you. Because you have decisions to make in that realm, and so you want to be empowered by the team that you build around you, where they're handling the details, but they're engaging with you in a way that's meaningful. And whoever you have, so I think obviously a tax person and then the day-to-day accounting person, and they both they need to be on your team, and they're people that you hire. And I think it's really important that every business owner feels like they have license to ask whatever they want and to ask for things in ways that make sense to them.
I think just asking questions is so important, and you should never
Mhm.
feel silly or talked down to or anything in any kind of person that you hire. That should never happen. But I think that sometimes there's certain fields where people maybe accept that more. I think doctors are one of them. I think
Mhm.
financial people are another one where you kind of go into it going, well, I don't really know. So I guess I must be, not
Mhm.
very educated on this. I'll just need to listen to them. And I know, in my own journey with my financial team, one mistake that I've made is letting it go too long. So I
Mhm.
know that I need to make a change. I know I need to get a new person, and maybe it's an accountant, maybe it's a bookkeeper, whatever it is. And I just put it off. And that is not a good idea because then you just end up needing to fix it. And that can be expensive and a headache. So yeah, and then I think also just having that team along the way rather than at the end, which is also a mistake that I made early on. One of the challenges that I've had personally is that I don't do spreadsheets. They are really hard for me. When I look at a spreadsheet, my brain like fogs over, my eyes glaze, and I don't take in information that way. It's the same with like charts and graphs. I mean, a basic graph is fine, but I'm just not that kind of, I don't take in information like that. I take it through reading, I take it through, exchange and also like visual, not in that way, like pretty visual. Um,
Mhm.
and one of the things that I think is a really interesting about how you think about financial reporting is that you say that you can work with your accountant to make your reporting visual, simple, and this word really struck me, motivating instead of
Mhm.
overwhelming. So rather than getting that complex spreadsheet with tons of columns and no, like, what the heck is this? You're saying we don't have to deal with that? We can have another way? Can you explain that?
Yes, you can have, there's so many different ways, and finding one that works for you. And I love how you brought up motivating, because and that, feel free to ask your person, say, what's the biggest decision I need to make with this financial information? And how can I, what information can you provide to me to help me make that decision? Um, and so then you're putting it on them to decipher the information first, and then ask them to keep telling you until it makes sense, or to show it to you in different ways. And there are tons of ways. And I mean, you know, I love spreadsheets. So, but I love that because I've done it so long and I have so much experience, I can present things in like a million different ways. And so it's challenging and creative for me when someone asks, like, this doesn't work, try something else. This doesn't work, try something else. So don't be afraid to do that, because you're asking them to be creative in a way that they're good at, by asking for things in different formats in different ways. So just keep asking until you get something that works.
I love that you like, I think this is something I didn't necessarily expect to take from this conversation. You're repeatedly bringing us back to ask for what you need and continue to ask. And again, at least a lot of my experience, not all, but a lot of my experience with numbers has not been a conversation. It's like, and I also find sometimes with accounting, they don't necessarily give you straight replies on questions sometimes. And I think there's probably some legal aspects to that. Like they can't advise you with this certain thing, even though they could tell you an answer, but they don't want to like risk giving you advice in this direction. And I had an exchange a while back where I was like, "But you didn't answer my question. Can you answer it?" Same thing, you know? So I'm sure there's some of that, but I love the permission to ask for the information to be presented differently. I
Mhm.
love that. I've never done that before, and that's gonna be, for me, my top takeaway from today.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's great. And it's interesting. I think it should be a conversation, and maybe that's one suggestion I would make for people when they're building their team or hiring someone, is interview them and ask them how open they are to doing things in a different way, and ask them for an example of a creative report they've created for somebody else, to just kind of get a sense of how willing they are to be flexible, because there is a range. Some people aren't comfortable going outside the box, and if you want them to, then that's not the right person for you. So I think it's important to find people that are willing to work on your terms. And I think yeah, everyone should have that. We all have that flexibility. It's the beauty of the world we live in, with lots of options.
Yeah, I love that so much. Um, okay, so another just along those same lines, if right now somebody has a bookkeeper, let's say, that's giving them just a monthly report, it's really basic.
Hmm.
What would be a first step for somebody who wants to start being a little bit more intentional with understanding their numbers? What could they ask their bookkeeper or their accountant to provide for them?
Well, I think the first thing everyone needs to start with is, what are their goals for their business? Like, what matters to them? Do they, if they're really stressed about paying their bills, then maybe the question is, like, how much cash do I have? How long is it going to last at this rate? Um, if you're really like, if your whole goal is you just want to increase revenue and grow your top line, then ask for trends. Like, are we headed? How much? Like, you could say, how much has my revenue gone up this month, or how much has it gone up how does it compare to last year? Or you could ask for, I mean, it's basically whatever your like we talked about earlier, are you motivated by? Like, what is your goal? And then you want to build the story around that.
I like that a lot. It's really, again, it's you knowing where you wanna go and then using the
Mhm.
numbers to help ensure that you are getting there.
Mhm.
Which it really leads nicely into this kind of next set of questions I wanna ask you about, and this is around growth, business growth.
Mhm.
And just again, going back to my story of I'm not a numbers person, I had a huge hurdle to overcome when I changed my business model. So I changed from being a freelancer to eventually I would put on that kind of solopreneur hat, a little bit more entrepreneurial, and then into a model where I had a team supporting me. And part of that was also pivoting now to focus on growth and expansion. And I had a major block around my metrics. I didn't like dealing with metrics. I thought it took away the heart of my work. I love making money, but then having to have like metrics that I'm measuring different aspects of the business, I just didn't like it. It just was like I was very resistant. And it took me a couple of years and seeing my friends and colleagues implement different systems into their businesses and how successful they were to kind of convince me that I needed to get over myself and just learn.
Mhm.
Um, and it's been amazing seeing when you are clear and you have real clarity around the metrics that matter, what a big difference that makes. And I'd love for you to talk about, first of all, what are healthy metrics? And how does that impact your long-term success in your business?
One thing I would really like to emphasize here is that it to just always remember that it's a journey. Like you said, it took you years to get over yourself, and what I really see is that doing something consistently is what matters. It's just like what workout regimen is the best. It's the one you do, and so it's the same with this. Whatever there's you want healthy metrics. You want to know, obviously you need to make sure you're bringing in money, that you can pay all your bills, that you have positive cash flow. I mean, those are just very simple things that anyone can start with and then grow from there. But the important thing is to set up, a system where you're, doing it consistently. Because even if you don't understand it the first time you look at it, if you keep looking at it, it's going to start clicking. And so you have to just commit to doing it and letting it evolve as your understanding evolves, as your business evolves, as your team evolves. Those things will keep going, but you have to commit to looking at it consistently and just trust that things will start falling into place over time. you
Hmm.
know so it's I don't know if that you want me to go
Yeah.
more into specifics or just as that.
I mean, isn't that so true with everything? It's like true with writing a book. It's
Mhm.
true with growing your business. It's true with, you know, coming around to metrics in your business. I wondered if you could just give an example of what would be a metric in maybe a business that you've had or you've worked with, and how did consistently, reviewing, checking in, tracking that metric make a difference in the growth of the business?
I guess like staying with I mean, we can start with any simple business. I mean, I guess I would start with, the one of my favorite sayings is nothing happens in business till someone sells something. So that just starting with that very basic metric, like how many people, like say you're just in some kind of sales business, how many people do you talk to every single day? What percentage of those people buy? And then that turns into revenue. So that's a very simple, like just breaking down a very simple sales cycle and then tracking those are metrics. You're just tracking numbers about how many calls you made, how many people said yes. And then over time you can start like tweaking what you're doing to improve your close rate per, like for example, or you can figure out ways to have more conversations or to have better pipeline of prospects so that you get a higher. And so you just start with the very simple, break it down into a story of like, how do I make money? I talk to people, I sell them something and they buy it, and then just build metrics around those. And it can be just, it can be super simple, but I mean, focusing on that, like making one extra call a day, and that's what a metric can help you do just by paying attention to this, that can totally change your world. I mean, that could increase your revenue like 10% or more over time. But just by having that one metric that you're looking at, it's going to motivate you and encourage you to do one more thing that helps your business.
Yeah.
It's a very simple concept. And it's just the consistency and, really understanding your own motivation, because that's the key
Yeah.
behavior.
It is simple once you understand it. But I think, again, for people that are new to this, the way that you broke that down is really nice because sometimes I think a word like metric feels more serious than it needs to be. It's just a measure of something, right?
Right.
And to your point, you know, when you look at those things that move you from somebody reaches out, connects with you, wants to work with you, to somebody works with you, and you measure kind of downstream, and then you pick the thing that if you improve that one thing, everything else is going to improve. That's to your point, that's where the magic is. I mean, it
Yeah.
just makes it so rather than going, I guess I'll try this, or I guess I'll try that, or let's do this, let's do that, you get super dialed and you really know what to do and you can make smart
Mhm.
decisions. So I love that you talked about that. Um Leslie, oh my gosh, we've just like we were going to talk for half an hour and a half an hour has flown by, but or half yeah, it's gone very quick. But let's just leave our viewers with one more thing from you. If okay, they've listened to this conversation and they are starting to feel like maybe I could be a numbers person. Maybe this is a future I could envision for myself. If they were to just take one action this week that would move them toward this new identity as a potential numbers person, what would it be?
Take, like you said, take action and just pick one thing. Start where you are, and ask yourself, what could I do like every week that's I can make it fun and that has to do with the numbers in my business or something, um, that, just start where you are, schedule, like CEO hour or my number power hour or something that is fun for you. Put it on your calendar and start where you are. And you can start 10 minutes, but just do it consistently and allow yourself that space to grow in this new identity and use the information to help you get what you want.
I love that. I love the idea of having that number power hour. That's fun and making it joyful and putting that space on your calendar. I think that's, I mean, everything really, getting that consistency in. Leslie, thank you. I feel so excited to go tackle all of the things I was dealing with this week. I have a fresh mindset, and I really, really appreciate your time and energy today.
Thank you. And I also want to encourage people, if it's intimidating to you, find a friend to do it with.
Yes.
It's always fun to have someone else on the journey with you too. So if you need a friend to join you in your power hour, feel free to ask someone else, another colleague or someone to join you on your quest.
Oh, I love that idea. I mean, that could even be tandem on Zoom, it doesn't
Hmm.
have to be somebody you meet up with in person.
Hmm.
I saw this reel about it was like moms that meet up once a month and just do all their like admin stuff they've been putting
Hmm.
off
Yeah.
all month. And I loved that idea because those are the things that you put off because it just is like, ugh, I don't want
Hmm.
to. And then you make it fun and
Yeah.
have community around it. So I love that
Yep.
suggestion.
Yeah. So that would be fun too. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to those of you who joined us for this conversation. I always have to thank Rita Dominguez for setting everything up. She's just the absolute queen of everything. Got us all organized, got us set up for this live. And thank